Welcome to World Leaders and Changemakers. Today, we're diving into the life of Franklin D. Roosevelt, the leader of crisis and war, born into a world of wealth and privilege in Hyde Park, New York. In 1882, young Franklin Delano Roosevelt seemed destined for a comfortable, predictable life. Educated at Groton and Harvard, he was surrounded by the elite. Yet, from an early age, a sense of public service was instilled in him. His distant cousin, Theodore Roosevelt, was a towering figure in American politics, and Franklin admired him deeply. This inspiration, combined with his own ambition, set him on a path far from the quiet life of a country gentleman. He married his fifth cousin, Eleanor Roosevelt, a woman who would become his most trusted advisor and a formidable political force in her own right. Their partnership, though complex, was a cornerstone of his career. Roosevelt's political journey began in the New York State Senate. He quickly made a name for himself as a progressive reformer, challenging the powerful Tammany Hall political machine. His star was on the rise. He then served as Assistant Secretary of the Navy under President Woodrow Wilson during World War I, gaining invaluable experience in national administration and military affairs. It seemed like a clear path to the top. He was the Democratic nominee for Vice President in 1920, but the ticket lost. Despite the setback, Roosevelt remained a prominent figure, his future bright. Then, in the summer of 1921, disaster struck. At the age of 39, Roosevelt was diagnosed with polio. The disease left him paralyzed from the waist down. For many, this would have been the end of a political career. The physical struggle was immense, and the emotional toll was just as heavy. But Roosevelt refused to be defined by his disability. He endured years of painful therapy, relentlessly trying to regain the use of his legs. While he never walked unaided again, this personal crisis forged in him a deeper empathy and a steely determination. He learned to connect with people who were suffering, a skill that would later define his presidency. With Eleanor's constant encouragement, he didn't just recover, he re-emerged, stronger and more resolved than ever. In 1928, Roosevelt made a triumphant return to public life, winning the governorship of New York. As the Great Depression began to cripple the nation, Governor Roosevelt implemented bold programs that offered a preview of what was to come. He established relief agencies and public works projects, earning a reputation as a man of action who cared about the common person. His innovative approach in New York set the stage for his presidential run. By 1932, America was on its knees. Banks were failing, unemployment was skyrocketing, and a sense of despair gripped the country. The nation was desperate for a leader who could offer a way out. Roosevelt ran for president with a promise of a new deal for the American people. He won by a landslide. In his inaugural address, he delivered one of the most famous lines in American history: "The only thing we have to fear is fear itself." These words were a jolt of electricity to a frightened nation. They signaled a new era of confidence and action. In his first 100 days, Roosevelt launched a whirlwind of legislation aimed at tackling the Depression from every angle. The Emergency Banking Act stabilized the financial system. The Civilian Conservation Corps put young men to work on environmental projects. The Tennessee Valley Authority brought electricity and jobs to one of the country's poorest regions. The New Deal was a vast and unprecedented experiment. It wasn't just one policy, but a collection of programs designed to provide relief, recovery, and reform. The Works Progress Administration, or WPA, created millions of jobs, building everything from roads and bridges to schools and parks. The Social Security Act of 1935 was perhaps his most enduring legacy, creating a national system of pensions for the elderly, unemployment insurance, and aid for dependent children. It was a fundamental shift, establishing a safety net for American citizens. Not everyone supported the New Deal. Critics accused Roosevelt of overreaching his power and pushing the country towards socialism. The Supreme Court even struck down some of his key programs. But for millions of Americans, Roosevelt was a hero. His fireside chats, radio addresses where he spoke directly to the public in a calm, reassuring tone, made people feel like the president was in their living rooms, personally guiding them through the crisis. He restored hope. As the 1930s wore on, a new storm was gathering across the oceans. Fascism was on the rise in Europe and Asia. In Germany, Adolf Hitler was building a war machine. In Italy, Mussolini dreamed of a new Roman Empire. And in Japan, the military was expanding its control across the Pacific. Roosevelt saw the danger long before many of his countrymen, while America was largely isolationist. Still reeling from World War I and focused on its domestic problems, Roosevelt began to slowly prepare the nation for the inevitable conflict. He called for a quarantine of aggressor nations and initiated the Lend-Lease Act, a clever policy that allowed the US to supply allied nations, particularly Great Britain, with war materials without officially entering the war. He called America the arsenal of democracy. Then came December 7, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The surprise attack on Pearl Harbor by the Japanese Empire thrust the United States into World War II. The nation, once divided, was now unified in purpose. Roosevelt's leadership shifted from domestic reformer to wartime commander-in-chief. He worked tirelessly, coordinating military strategy with Allied leaders like Winston Churchill and Joseph Stalin. The Big Three, as they were known, formed a powerful, if sometimes tense, alliance to defeat the Axis powers. The American economy transformed into a juggernaut of war production. Factories that once made cars now churned out tanks and planes. Millions of men and women, from all walks of life, contributed to the war effort, both on the battlefield and on the home front. The war took a tremendous toll on Roosevelt. Already burdened by his physical limitations, the stress of leading a global war was immense. Yet, he pushed on, driven by the belief that this was a fight for the future of freedom itself. He was elected to an unprecedented fourth term in 1944, a testament to the nation's trust in his leadership. He was instrumental in planning the D-Day invasion, the massive Allied landing in Normandy that marked the beginning of the end for Nazi Germany. He also laid the groundwork for the post-war world, championing the creation of the United Nations, an organization he hoped would prevent future global conflicts. He believed in a world where nations could work together to solve their problems peacefully. But Franklin Roosevelt would not live to see the final victory. On April 12, 1945, just weeks before Germany's surrender, he passed away from a cerebral hemorrhage. The news sent a shockwave of grief across the country and around the world. The man who had guided America through its two greatest crises of the 20th century was gone. Roosevelt's legacy is monumental. He fundamentally reshaped the role of the American government, creating social programs that are still part of our lives today. He led the nation out of its darkest economic hour and through a world war, establishing the United States as a global superpower. More than that, through his own struggle and unwavering optimism, he taught a generation of Americans how to face adversity with courage and hope. Franklin D. Roosevelt was not just a president, he was a beacon in the storm, a true changemaker who steered his nation toward a new horizon. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, look into the life of a world-changing leader. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories from world leaders and changemakers. See you next time.